DG. I saw Ambassador Mabongo as well in the room. And then, Minister, we also have a student from the University of Pretoria who has gate crashed our press briefing.
It's not allowed.
This is the only time I can override. You are most welcome. With much ado, Minister, we hand over to you to read out our press statement and outline why we are gathered here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Crispin. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the media. As South Africa commemorates the 30th anniversary of our Constitution, and in this month marks the 70th anniversary of the heroic 1956 Women's March, we celebrate far more than a historic legal milestone. We honor a living covenant that has for 3 decades anchored our democracy in the values of human dignity, equality, freedom, and justice. These principles have not only transformed our nation, but have also shaped South Africa's engagement with the African continent and the international community. These anniversaries invite us to reflect on the enduring vision that gave birth to our constitutional democracy and continues to guide our collective journey towards a more inclusive, just, and a prosperous society. These are the values that inform our approach to the international community. Our Constitution stands as both a symbol of South Africa's triumph over division and a testament to our unwavering commitment to human rights, constitutionalism, multilateralism, and international solidarity. As we celebrate this milestone, we reaffirm our responsibility to advance peace, development, and operations guided by the values that have defined our democracy for the past 30 years and continue to inspire hope for generations to come. Firstly, I will start with the 46th Ordinary SADC Summit of Heads of State and Government and associated activities that have already commenced up until the 18th of August. South Africa is honored to be the host of the 46th Ordinary SADC Summit of Heads of State and Government in Durban from the 3rd to the 17th of August 2026. The summit takes place at a significant moment for the region, with South Africa serving as its interim chair of SADC following developments after the 45th Ordinary Summit in Madagascar. The hosting of the summit will culminate in the formal assumption of SADC chairship by His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa for the 2026-2027 period. The summit is being held under the theme Resilient, Sustainable and Inclusive Industrialization through Infrastructure Development, Agricultural and Critical Minerals Transformation in Pursuit of a Just World. The formal summit program commenced on the 4th of August 2026 at the Inkosi Albert Lutuli International Convention Center, beginning with the technical and preparatory meetings which will feed into the Council of Ministers and ultimately the Summit of Heads of State and Government on the 17th of August 2026. The first engagements include the meeting of senior officials on the mechanisms for the rationalization of Council and Summit decisions, and the SADC Presidential Champions Initiative, which began yesterday and concludes today, 5 August 2026. These discussions aims to strengthen the effectiveness of SADC decision-making and enhance implementation of regional priorities through high-level political leadership and accountability. What happens between now and the summit? The summit processes unfolds through a structured sequence of technical, senior officials, ministerial and political meetings that progressively prepare decisions for adoption by heads of state and government. Standing Committee of Senior Officials, 6 to 7 August 2026. Senior officials from all member states will consider reports and recommendations from sectoral structures. Preparations of recommendations to be submitted to Ministers' Finance Committee meeting, 8 August 2026. Consideration of SADC budget, resources mobilization, and financial sustainable matters. Preparation and finalization of documents, 9 to 11 August 2026. Consolidation of reports and preparations of documents for consideration by ministers. These meetings are important because they focus on the following: improving the effectiveness and the quality of SADC Council and Summit decisions by ensuring decisions are implementable, measurable, and better monitored. Considering the proposed framework for SADC presidential champions, where heads of state and government will champion priority regional development areas, such as infrastructure, industrialization, agriculture, resource mobilization, mining, and social development. Advancing implementation of the Regional Indicative Strategic Development Plan, well known as the RISDP 2020 to 2030, which remains the region's primary development blueprint. The Council of Ministers meeting between 12 and 14 August 2026, that I will be chairing as South Africa's Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, in my capacity as the chairperson of the SADC Council of Ministers. Ministers will consider recommendations from the senior officials and adopt policy decisions for submissions to the summit. Key issues include industrialization, infrastructure, regional trade, food security, health, peace and security, regional financing, and institutional reforms. Other high-level events and meetings include the following: the SADC public lecture on the 14th of August 2026. President Cyril Ramaphosa will deliver the SADC public lecture on the 14th of August 2026 at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, Westville campus, under the theme, Translating Vision 2050 into Action, Pathways Towards Solidarity, Equality, Shared Prosperity. This lecture will provide a platform for dialogue on implementing SADC Vision 2050 and the future of regional integration. The Organ Troika meeting, 15 August 2026. Meetings of senior officials and the Ministerial Committee of the Organ on Politics, Defense and Security Cooperation. Consideration of regional peace and security matters. The Organ Troika Summit and arrival of heads of state and government will be on the 16th of August 2026. Meetings of the Organ Troika Summit, which is composed of Malawi, Tanzania, and Eswatini. Wreath-laying ceremony honoring eminent South African liberation heroes, arrival of heads of state and government. A state banquet hosted by President Cyril Ramaphosa. The 46th Ordinary SADC Summit of Heads of State and Government will be on the 17th of August 2026. Official opening of the summit, formal handover of the SADC chairship from Zimbabwe to South Africa. President Cyril Ramaphosa assumes the role of SADC chairship for 2026-2027. The heads of state and government deliberate on regional priorities and adopt the summit outcomes and the decisions. The heads of state and government are expected to consider 47 decisions submitted through the summit process. The final number of decisions may be amended based on the deliberations during the preparatory meetings. Main outcomes are expected from the summit process. The summit platform will provide South Africa with an opportunity to articulate its approach, including to other issues which will also include migration management and regional cooperation on migration-related challenges. South Africa will underscore its commitment to managing migration in a lawful, orderly, human, and effective manner, consistent with the Constitution and the international obligations. Government is implementing a comprehensive migration management approach that strengthens border security, combats irregular migration, addresses the unlawful employment of undocumented migrants, enhances enforcement of immigration and labor laws, and tackles corruption within the migration system. South Africa will also emphasize the importance of regional cooperation in addressing migration challenges in a manner that promotes stability, development, and respect for human rights. The outcomes to look out for: accelerating regional industrialization, value chain development, strengthening infrastructure connectivity and transport corridors, enhancing agricultural productivity and food security, advancing beneficiations of critical minerals, improving regional peace, security, and stability, strengthening resource mobilization and the operationalization of the SADC Regional Development Fund, enhancing implementation and monitoring of SADC decisions, strengthening institutional effectiveness through the rationalization mechanism and presidential champions initiatives. South Africa's participation at the United Nations General Assembly. This will be in September. South Africa remains firmly committed to the purpose and principles of the United Nations Charter and international law, including international human rights, humanitarian law. The consistent application is essential to protecting civilians, preventing conflict, preserving the sovereignty of states, and maintaining international peace and security. We believe that the answer to the current crisis of multilateralism is not less multilateralism, but a better and more inclusive multilateralism. International law cannot be applied selectively. The credibility of international system depends on the equal application of its rules, regardless of the power or the influence of the states involved. When respect for the UN Charter and international humanitarian law erodes, it threatens only these directly affected by conflict, but the integrity of the entire international order. South Africa will continue advancing these principles in close cooperation with the international community, particularly with Bangladesh, which holds the presidency of the General Assembly during the 81st session. The theme of this year's session is Restoring Trust, Managing Transformation, a United Nations that delivers for all, which speaks directly to the needs for a more effective and a more responsive multilateral system. We also commend the presidency of the Federal Republic of Germany during the 80th session of the General Assembly. South Africa demonstrated its commitment to that presidency by seconding an official from the Department of International Relations and Cooperation to the Office of the President of the General Assembly, specifically to support the advancement of the African agenda. We acknowledge and commend Ms. Thandegile Shabalala for her outstanding contribution in that role. South Africa's participation in the high-level week of the General Assembly will commence on the 22nd of September 2026. This 81st session of the General Assembly will also mark a change in guard. As many of you are already aware, it's the last term of the Secretary General, and this will be his last UN General Assembly. The process for the election of a new Secretary General has begun. We want to take this moment to pay tribute to the Secretary General Antonio Guterres for his role and contribution to the work of the United Nations and the entire globe. We commend the outgoing Secretary General for his leadership and commitment to multilateralism that is addressing the lived experience of all global citizens. We look forward to working closely with the next incumbent in a manner that reforms the UN so that it's fully reflective of a post-colonial society, with Africa finally being represented on the Security Council. As many of you are already aware, the process of the appointment or election of the new Secretary General has already started. Lobbying is intense. They've already done some public engagements. Therefore, we will also be receiving some of the candidates who have requested to see us, to advance their candidature, to engage us, and to give us their vision. And for that, later this month, we will receive Rebecca Greenspan, who will engage with myself and also the President in her campaigning trail. The recent meeting of the African Union Executive Council, following a decision by the 49th Ordinary Session of the African Union Executive Council not to discuss migration at the upcoming AU midterm review meeting, South Africa reaffirms its support for the long-standing decision of the AU to convene a continent-wide conference on migration. The 25th AU Assembly, which was held in Johannesburg in 2015, called for an African migration conference to consider approaches to accelerate mobility and development within the continent, while addressing the challenges posed by increased irregular migration and strengthening capacity to manage migration inflows. South Africa supports the implementation of this decision. South Africa believes that a continent-wide convening on migration must take a holistic view. It must consider migration's relationship with peace and stability, economic development, regional integration, and democratic governance. It must also provide a space for member states to discuss the root causes of anti-migration sentiments and develop a collective continental approach to preventing violence, discrimination, xenophobia, and other forms of intolerance. The need for this dialogue has become increasingly urgent. Migration is a continental phenomenon, if not a global phenomenon. whose consequences extend beyond the jurisdiction of any single state. The agency is further underscored by the recent research indicating that almost 6 in 10 Africans aged between 18 and 25 have considered immigrating, primarily in search of a better opportunities. At the same time, African migration remains largely intracontinental, with most African international migrants moving to another country in the continent. Of all international migrants originating from Africa, approximately 45% reside outside their home countries, and of that group, over 50% move within the African continent itself. Key destinations such as South Africa, Egypt, Cote d'Ivoire receive the vast majority of these intra-African migrants. Research also points to a growing negative attitude toward migrants across the continent and globally, driven in part by prevailing economic hardships. The recent report by the UN Refugee Agency that at least 144 people have been reported dead or missing off the coast of Mauritania in an effort to reach Europe, and the recent mass migrants that entered the small city of Ceuta in Spain points to an Africa-wide challenge than just a South African challenge. So just discussing South Africa when dealing with migration in the continent will not resolve the problem. It's a problem that must be engaged comprehensively with all its facets. Report back on matters assigned to South Africa by the African Union. We appraise the AU member states on several tasks assigned to the Republic of South Africa by the summit and its attendant structures. We serve as the chair of the Committee of 5 on South Sudan and as the chair of the Ministerial Follow-up Committee on the implementation of Agenda 2063. During our chairship, we have noted a growing continental commitment to strengthening accountability, accelerating implementation, and mobilizing sustainable financing for Africa's transformation agenda, while acknowledging the challenges that remain. Our chairship has considered and recommended a feasibility study for the establishment of the AU Agenda 2063 Development Fund. The proposed fund must complement existing African financing institutions, avoid duplication of mandates, and establish clear governance and accountability structures. With regards to the upcoming elections in South Sudan, as the chair of the C5, we encourage the international community to assist South Sudan to reach the important milestone of having an election which is inclusive and realistically meets the requirements of the revitalized peace agreements. Only a credible and inclusive election can bring long-lasting peace, security, and prosperity for the people of South Sudan. On peace and security matters, South Africa welcomed the decision to convene an extraordinary summit of the African Union on the strengthening of mechanism for conflict prevention and resolution in Africa from 29 to 30 August in Luanda in Angola. This will allow the continent to give practical expressions to the principle of African solutions for African problems. The conflict in Sudan has become more than just a humanitarian catastrophe. It is one of the biggest moral failures in our lifetime. South Africa will use this platform as a critical opportunity to mobilize the continent towards a structured intervention. We also welcome the decision of the Executive Council to raise the issue of the exclusion of South Africa from the 2026 G20 that is under the leadership of the United States of America. This firm position to raise this matter will advocate for inclusivity and will ensure that South Africa, as a founding member, its exclusion is discussed in the table of the G20. That the G20 must be defined, what is it when it does not have one of its founding members, which is South Africa. We therefore welcome this position of the African Union. South Africa, the 18th BRICS Summit. South Africa will participate in the 18th BRICS Summit, which will be held in New Delhi in India under the theme, Building for Resilience, Innovation, Cooperation, and Security. The 2026 summit is expected to focus on maintaining unity within an expanded and a more diverse membership, while advancing cooperation on global governance reforms, economic development, and the interest of the Global South. The summit will focus on strengthening BRICS cooperation through the people-centered development agenda, expanding trade and investment, enhancing financial and institutional cooperation, and promoting reforms of the United Nations and the international financial institutions. Discussions will take into consideration the ongoing geopolitical tensions, including the conflicts in the Middle East and Ukraine, and the broader major power competition, with members seeking to emphasize multipolarity, strategic autonomy, and consensus-based diplomacy while managing areas of divergence that could undermine BRICS cohesion. At the summit, South Africa will advance economic diplomacy objectives through the BRICS Business Forum, which is scheduled to take place on the 11th of September 2026. The forum will engage on issues such as trade and supply chain, agriculture, women-led development, the digital economy, and innovation. The South African chapter of the BRICS Business Council will actively participate in the business forum. South Africa continues to call for the urgent cessation of conflicts in Russia and Ukraine, as well as in Iran, to prevent further loss of life and the destruction of infrastructure. Every effort must be made to de-escalate and end these conflicts. South Africa remains firmly committed to the need for a peaceful and a negotiated resolution within a rules-based system centered on international law, including respect for human rights and the principles of the UN Charter. The sovereignty and the territorial integrity of all states remains inviolable. Consequently, South Africa supports all efforts to bring these conflicts to an end and welcome initiatives aimed at facilitating negotiations. We remain steadfast in our commitment to a peaceful resolution of conflicts through a negotiated settlement, with all parties to the conflict having a seat at the table. An update on High Commissioner to India, High Commissioner Shukla. We confirm that High Commissioner Anik Shukla has been recalled to the headquarters for further consultations. We have also submitted the recommendations to Parliament and to the Presidency to consider a new framework for protocol and diplomatic support to former presidents and former deputy presidents during international travel. As part of this framework, the Presidency and DIRCO jointly established a mandatory disclosure mechanism requiring former presidents and deputy presidents seeking protocol and diplomatic support to provide full details of the purpose of travel, programs, activities, sources of funding, principal hosts, key engagements, and the capacity in which they will be traveling, to enable an informed assessment of the appropriate level of support required and any associated reputational, political, and diplomatic or security risks that may be involved. This will help us avoid a situation where former presidents portray themselves as also representing South Africa's foreign policy, particularly when they have not been mandated by the sitting head of state. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. I'm sure we can agree that was a very comprehensive outline. So when you don't see the Minister, that's what happens. When he does come, he's got a lot to offload. So we can take questions, and we've also got questions on the WhatsApp line. We'll take that in the next round, but we'll start with those in the room. Sophie, Tando, and Shazna.
Thank you so much. Minister, on your meeting with the Ambassador of the United States of America, you just indicated that the meeting of the Council of Ministers in Addis has agreed that during the G20 meeting in November in America, the AU must raise objection to exclusion of South Africa. Did you raise this issue also with the Ambassador of the United States of America? And if so, what was his response? And also, with the new sheriff in town in the United Kingdom, have you as government reached out to the new Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, because they will be hosting the G20 next year? And lastly, on the UNSG position, you spoke about a pending visit by one of the candidates. But what is South Africa's position in terms of principle as it relates to who South Africa would want to see leading this world body, looking at different issues such as gender, geographic location or regional inclusivity. Thank you so much.
Okay. Morning, Minister. My name is Tando Mayeko from Business Day. South Africa currently has a number of long-standing ambassadorial vacancies, including in Norway and London. Can you confirm when these vacancies will be filled, and will the new appointments draw on nominees from across all GNU parties, not just the ANC? Thanks.
Good morning, it's Nkosinathi Shazi from Power FM News. Just two questions, Minister. The BRICS bloc, there's been a lot of political criticism of the BRICS bloc, and this is in particular because of its supposed lack of political backing for Iran. Now, in the first BRICS foreign ministers meeting, there was not a general consensus that was made. There was no joint communication on where the bloc stands with regards to the conflict in Iran. As we head into the BRICS bloc next month, what is the current status of the bloc and where they stand with regards to the war in the Middle East? Are there some countries for or against it? Secondly, on BRICS, can you confirm the president's attendance for the BRICS bloc in India? And then my last question is on the United Nations General Secretary candidates. Now, of course, Rebecca is the favorite. With her coming to visit the president and you, is this South Africa's endorsement of her to be the next General Secretary? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm Hawelo Magoleo from UFM. Regarding that, I struggle with the name Suez, the Spanish enclave in Morocco. We saw right-wing groups in Europe trying to agitate their counterparts locally to say you should be careful that people can just storm into SA like this. I'm sure from a security perspective as a government, you would have assessed you. I don't think that is possible, but you've got to say there's the government. Are you worried that there's any, even as very remotely, such a possibility of 70,000 plus people running across the border into South Africa? And then still on right-wing groups, certain countries within the continent are reporting mass rejection of visa applications of their citizens in retaliation by Britain, the US, to the agenda of the demand for reparations for colonization and the transatlantic slave trade. I know that South Africa is part of the AU, you are part of that. Are you not worried that you could, by participating in this agenda, antagonize the US Trump administration further, especially when it's already treating South Africa as a rogue state? The demand for reparations that is being championed by Ghana for slavery and colonialism, are you not concerned that you could be provoking Trump further by participating in it? And while on edit, just clarify, how is South Africa participating? What is our contribution to it? And also whether we have had instances where people are reporting high level of rejection of visas that could be associated to that.
Do you want to go first, Mr. DG, then you? Do you want the DG? Yeah, hold on a second.
They want to see.
I'll just do a couple and then the minister will do the rest. I think, Masofedi, you spoke about the G20. So the discussions with the US has been ongoing around the G20 issues. And we've also been getting regular briefings from other G20 Sherpas. And as the minister has said, the African Union has put our exclusion, which is irregular, on the agenda, and so has almost every single member of the G20. So there is a question about what the outcome of the US's documents will be. Will it be consensus based? That's the discussion. And essentially the argument is it cannot be consensus based given that we are actively excluded. We did not exclude ourselves. So I think that should answer that. So the engagement with the ambassador here did not focus on the G20, but the discussions have been ongoing on the G20 issues. I think on the ambassadorial vacancies, I think those are being dealt with, but there's no vacancy in London. We still have an ambassador, the High Commissioner there, whose term is coming to an end quickly. I'm not going to talk about the BRICS issues. Maybe Minister, I could leave that to you, but suffice to say that with the expanded BRICS, and we have the BRICS Sherpa sitting there behind, and he could want to, we could add in on this, but essentially on the geopolitical issues, given the expanded BRICS, plus we shouldn't be surprised that we can't get consensus as easily when it was just 4 members of BRICS. So that includes Iran and many other conflicts across the globe. And then on the developments in Spain, I think that you could see particular trends where migration issues are being weaponized for political purposes. The events in Spain are unique given that Quito is an enclave. It's Spanish territory, but it's an enclave on African soil, and it's been used to actually, in the assessment of many analysts, to embarrass Spain for stances they've taken on the geopolitical agenda. I think I will stop there and the Minister will sweep.
Maybe we can come on BRICS.
You want to come on BRICS?
Thank you very much, Minister, and greetings to all colleagues. On the BRICS, I will not add much except to say and reiterate what Minister Lamola had said after the last meeting of the foreign ministers of BRICS. So what had happened in India was that the document, the outcome document, was fully negotiated, and 99% of it was actually agreed, despite the challenges that the DG has referred to with the expansion of BRICS. So there was only one paragraph, to be more precise, that was not agreed. So we saw this as a positive outcome, in the sense that we could agree on all the principles and values that have always underpinned BRICS since its formation, to which South Africa subscribes. So we saw, therefore, the meeting in India not so much as a failure, because we could not agree on just one paragraph, but I think it's important to recognize this. And after the meeting, as I said, Minister Lamola did talk about this to the media. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Whether we are engaging with the UK, Ma'am Sophie, yes, we started engagements with the UK immediately after handing over our role, because we are supposed to be part of the Troika. So our Sherpas and myself with my former colleague in the UK, who has just been reshuffled now to another department, we have been in constant contact. And also the Sherpas are in constant contact, particularly to hand over some of the content and discussions that the UK can carry on in their G20 presidency next year. And we are ready to collaborate and work with them. I will also have a telephone call on Thursday with my new counterpart from the UK. This will also be a point that we are going to develop. Whether the visit of Crispin is South Africa's endorsement to her candidature, it is a common practice that candidatures visit different countries to lobby, to engage, and all that. So we will be lobbying, we will be engaging her from that context of understanding her vision, what she wants to do in the UN and all that. And the principles will guide us as to who we will support. There is an unwritten tradition and culture in the UN of rotation. And this time is the turn of Latin America. So we will support the candidature from Latin America. That should be clear. Secondly, our president has mentioned it several times in the UN General Assembly that we will also want to support a woman to be the first Secretary General of the UN. So I guess it does already give you some kind of indication of where we are headed to. So you at least have two now. Latin America, the candidate must be woman. But the president, as to who we support, he will announce at the right time. And how does South Africa participate in this issue of reparations? We are participating as a member state of the African Union. Minister Kubai represented us in the last meeting in Ghana. Is it Minister Kubai or Marupi?
Yeah, Marupi.
Yeah, it's Minister Ramokhupa M. Maruping, who represented us in the last meeting on the reparations. But it's justice that is more in the forefront to represent us on this aspect, on this issue. And we are participating there. We are part of the African Union, and we support the resolution of the UN in this regard. And we do not think that this resolution should be used to punish anyone, any African, anywhere in the world for visa or for any reason. Because this resolution is for justice, is for reparations, it's a collective resolution of the African Union and also of the United Nations, of the UN. So it's now international law because it's a resolution of the UN. So you cannot select a particular country or a continent to punish. Everyone, Africans, they cannot be unjustly excluded for any visa or for any program in the world because they are from Africa. I think those are the three that were not answered. Thank you.
Okay, I have questions on the online platform. Good day, Minister. This is from Peter Fabricus from the Daily Maverick. Good day, Minister. While the recent AU Executive Council rejected Ghana's application to discuss South Africa's xenophobia at the midterm meeting, will South Africa's xenophobia still be discussed at the next ordinary AU summit in February, as the AU Commission chairperson seems to support? Then we have a question from Dennis Dalport from Network 24. Minister Lamola, Anil Suklal is adamant that Durko was aware of the visit of former President Zuma and instructed him to prepare the visit. Is this indeed the case? And a follow-up question on that matter as well from Mr. Fabricus is High Commissioner Suklal being disciplined, and if so, what did he do wrong? Especially as your statement that you are changing the protocol for traveling for former heads of state seems to imply that High Commissioner Suklal complied with the protocols as they now exist. And DG Dango, which country weaponized the Quetta situation to embarrass Spain? I think that one we can say, Peter, DG Dango said this was the view of several analysts, so I think that's dealt with. Last question, Minister, I don't know who this is from, it's from Gauteng Network, from Cindy Sotlabati. Says, Minister, Nigeria is both South Africa's biggest economic competitor and its most important partner on the continent. Ahead of Nigeria's 2027 elections, what is a specific outcome that South Africa is hoping for? And how will this outcome impact South Africa's trade, security, and leadership position within Africa and the AU? Interesting question. Turkmen?
Minister, Turkmen Terzi representing Turkish Minister. Minister, South Africa hosted 2022 Pretoria peace talk that helped end conflict in northern Ethiopia. I remember DG Dango played important role. After the fighting over the weekend, what does DIRCO see as the main reason for the renewed violence? Is South Africa planning to work with the African Union or the parties involved to help protect the peace agreement and prevent a wider conflict. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions in the room? Okay. DG, do you want to come back or?
Thanks. So I'll deal with the questions around the Ambassador Sukla matter. Just to point out that what we have put forward is, as the Minister pointed out, a review on the protocols around which former presidents can travel. And I think that transparency is going to be important. And we are asking also for details on visits. So whether Ambassador High Commissioner Sukla knew about the visit or not, obviously he would have known, because we would be getting communication from the presidency that the former president would be visiting a country, in this case India. But what we don't get is details about what the visit will be about. And that's all the High Commissioner will also have known, is that there is a meeting, and then he was subsequently invited to the same meeting. And that's the subject of our discussions that we will be having with him. So it's not about whether we knew or not. We always get a letter, and the letter is standard that indicates that we must provide protocol to any of the presidents that do travel. But what we do ask for now is increased guidance and increased transparency about what these visits would be, to safeguard not only Turco, but to safeguard the country's national interests and reputation. Then on the Pretoria Minute, I think we've seen large numbers of people fleeing the Tigray region into Sudan, of all areas. We are really concerned that it is unraveling, so we will be engaging with our counterparts in the African Union, but also some of the leading negotiators of the Pretoria Minute to see to what extent they can intervene to safeguard some of the agreements that were made. So it is of real concern for us, because we don't want that kind of destabilization to occur again. Thank you.
Leading negotiators, including the USA.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'm left with only one question to answer. the Nigeria and Ghana. I think this is from Peter, on whether the AU will discuss at its next summit the issue of South Africa's xenophobia. As I've said, Ghana attempted to introduce the matter, and the AU Executive Council did not agree that it was relevant for the midterm in October. We raised our view that any discussion on this matter must be comprehensive, deal with the push and pull factors, the root causes of illegal migration, all of them: climate change, economic, peace and stability, democracy, in a comprehensive manner. There is no discussion that will be helpful that will just focus on South Africa, because we are not the only country facing a migration challenge. 45% of the African continent lives outside their countries, and not out of choice, but out of necessity, to eke a living or for whatever reason. So these issues must be discussed and be properly dissected. And that's why we recalled the Johannesburg decision of 2015 that called for a wide range engagement, a conference on migration, to take into account the evolving patterns of migration in the continent and in the globe, deal with it in its comprehensiveness. And as you have heard in the statement, we have also cited what has happened on the Mediterranean Sea, where 144 people either died or disappeared. The situation in Ceuta in Spain. There are many such incidents across the continent.
Daily?
Yeah, daily. So it's not a South African phenomenon. What we are disagreeing with is to isolate it and make it a South Africa phenomenon. particularly through the intervention of Ghana. When you look at it, is that we because we are one of the highest receiving countries in the continent, therefore we end up being the ones that are mostly discussed. So in other words, you can say we are sometimes victims of agreeing to the protocols on Africa integration. So we are saying it should not be just the burden of South Africa. It should be of the whole continent. And therefore, it must be discussed in a comprehensive way. But if you just want to put it on an agenda and say xenophobia in South Africa, what will happen is that South Africa will be almost like be in some kind of court or inquiry, where we must go there and defend ourselves. And all other countries that want to attack South Africa. Then what will be the conclusion of such a meeting? It will be a zero-sum game. Because someone will also come and defend South Africa, another one will come and attack, and then what will be the end result of such a debate? It will be a zero-sum game. No one will be a beneficiary. But if we have a wide comprehensive conference on migration, it will come with clear scientific interventions, well-processed, researched intervention that will be processed by the various institutions, even organs of the AU, including member states, which can then come with papers, stats, interventions, as you have already heard us citing some stats. So that is the view of South Africa, that this matter does not belong to the Leaders Summit. If it ends up in the Leaders Summit, it must go there as a report from that conference that we will have had, that will have had a comprehensive discussion. Besides all this, as a country, we are also cooperating with the African People's Human Rights Commission on the matter. They will also be soon visiting South Africa, and we will be responding, cooperating with them with regards to this issue that is on the table, which is the appropriate organ of the AU. But to take it to the Executive Council, to the summit, it will not be an ideal platform, because the agenda will be very clear, to just name and shame South Africa, with no intention to come out with resolutions. So a comprehensive engagement is what South Africa will support, and we agree with. Let's deal with the root causes, the push and pull factors, economic integration, issues of climate change, issues of unemployment, issues of peace and security that drives people to leave their countries. These are the real root causes. You cannot treat the symptom of the problem. You must treat the root cause of the problem to come up with a solution. So that is South Africa's position, and we'll advocate it in all platforms of the AU, including with regards to the issue that Peter has raised, whether the summit will be the appropriate platform. If the matter ends up at the summit, it must go as a report which is well processed, not just as a platform of naming and shaming. It's not that we are worried about going to defend ourselves. We don't have a problem. We can go and defend ourselves if there is a need, but we think that will not be a solution. Because there is a solution, and the solution is there. The African Union, in its wisdom, took a resolution in 2015 and said it calls for a comprehensive conference on migration. That is what the African Union should do, is to implement that resolution. That already exists, it is there, it must just be implemented. So that's what South Africa is saying. We need to recall that resolution. We don't have a complex task, it's already there. It's just to dust it off from the shelves and put it on the table for implementation. Thank you very much. Oh, the Ghana one, the Nigeria, the elections in Nigeria. No, we wish them free and fair elections. That's the only thing we can say. We can't wish any other thing, because we can't have a preference as to who must win or who must lose. We wish Nigeria free and fair elections that will be peaceful, and that will be in the interest of democracy. And we look forward to work with whoever that the people of Nigeria will elect as their leaders. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. That concludes our press conference, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. We'll see you at the next press conference. The Minister has got an engagement to address next on. Thank you.